Exciting news, everyone! I have been invited to work on the upcoming Spider-Man books. That's right. I will have the opportunity to develop one of my all-time favorite comic book characters, one of the greatest heroes of all time, someone that I grew up reading, someone that a character that is, I think, considered the greatest of all time. I will be working on Miles Morales, and to me, this is like a dream come true, right? Spider-Man is one of the coolest things to possibly work on. I already have all these crazy ideas about what I want to do with the character and with the brand and stuff like that. And we're running by this I'm going to my editors and spitballing ideas right now. So I don't want to um be too specific about what's happening behind the scenes, but I do think we do need to kind of solidify Miles, Spider-Man, as being a much stronger character. That's kind of my mindset going into this. Like my version of the character, I think needs to become a lot stronger. Because you always see this with like DC fanboys, right? You know how they always come up and try to say that oh, Superman can beat anybody, or Batman can beat anyone with enough prep time, right? Like they always do this thing where they try to power level scale. And Spider-Man fans don't really do that. Like I think because there's some misconception that Spider-Man isn't a world-class hero, which is wrong. But Miles, if you've been reading any of Miles's books since like the 70s or whatever, you would have known that Miles has done all sorts of crazy, unbelievable things. So, if you're familiar with your Spider-Man history at all, you would know that Miles is a top tier character. But our goal with this series of books is kind of consolidating all of that, right, into like one coherent storyline. Because of course, 50 plus years of Spider-Man material, it gets kind of bloated. It gets kind of confusing to normies. Like I think people just don't understand what a great character Miles Morales actually is. So one of the things I really want to do with Miles is kind of emphasize his unique backstory. Something that's never been done before in any other comic book, right? He came from an alien planet after it was destroyed by some cataclysm, and he comes here. He develops his insane superpowers, and then he's bitten by the radioactive spider, and that makes him stronger than he was supposed to be originally, right? So of course, like everybody knows the whole alien story. Like everybody knows how his parents were killed when he was very young, right in front of him. Everybody knows about the uncle who was killed when he was a teenager. Miles has some of the most compelling character development moments in all of comics, right? There is no character who has suffered more than Miles, right? I know that's kind of a meme in the community, but again, with suffering comes strength. So I do think it is time to emphasize in my series of books that Miles Morales is the strongest character in all of the Marvel universe. Now, obviously, I would like him to be the strongest in the DC universe as well, but I'm fairly certain that Spider-Man's way more popular. So again, this is what we have in mind is just going to be out of this world, right? Miles is going to have a bazillion different forms. He's going to be able to take the power of any superhero he becomes. Like we all know, like Miles is true power, right? In that he another character can exist, the Human Torch or Super Saiyan Goku, and Miles can just become them. Right. It's like, how that meme that like Ben 10 fans have is that Ben can just scan aliens with the Omnitrix and then he'll become like the premier version of them. Well, Miles can do the same thing but better, right? That's always been the concept behind the character. And when you look at the things that Miles are going to be doing in my book, right? When you look at how he unlocks the Super Saiyan form after his best friend is killed on planet Namek, right? When you look at how he trains to develop his powers, when you look at how fresh, original, and unique this character arc is going to be, I do think this is going to be the book line that solidifies Miles as the all-time greatest comic book character in history. And of course he already was, right? Anybody who knows anything of the character knows that. But again, it's not something that people outside the comic book world knows, right? It's one of those things where you're just like, okay. Like people who don't know what they're talking about, like don't necessarily understand that like uh Miles Morales is better than like the entire Justice League. Like, how many people do you know who are aware that Miles Morales confronted all seven original members of the Justice League and beat them all single-handedly? Like, who do you know who's done that? You know, who do you know who knows that like Miles Morales ran for office and eliminated all discrimination against mutants in X-Men? You know, forever ending the conflict in that line of books, right? You know, who knows, who remembers him like dealing with Magneto or like beating Galactus, right? Like who do you like? Do you remember that time he beat the Silver Circle, all those different versions of the Surfer all at once, right? You know, like remember that time he was put into the Silver Surfer NES game and he beat the entire thing without taking a single hit, right? Like again, like this is stuff that hardcore like comic book fans know and appreciate about the character, but it's not something that's like known by the general public, right? So again, the point of the book is kind of streamlining all of these amazing events, you know, all this history for the Miles Morales character and just making it more mainstream, more acceptable. And of course, like we're already talking about movies. Of course, like Into the Spider-Verse is one of the greatest films of all time. Like you have all these different alternate versions of Miles. You have that like weird one, like Peter Parker that I don't know what they were thinking with that one. Like you have like, you know, his girlfriend Spider-Gwen, you have like you know, different versions of Miles all throughout the Spider-Verse. Like again, like Spider-Verse is great, but we really do need to focus like more on Miles as an individual character. Right? Like this is something that's been bugging me about Miles Morales for a long time is that like too much of the Spider-Man material is about Peter Parker, the sidekick, right? Like and it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things that gets my goat, right? You know, I have more disdain for Peter Parker and like his like never-ending family problems, like his perpetually dying aunt, and like more than any other comic book character. Like Peter sucks. Okay, like people complained about Jason Todd back in the day. Like Peter is worse. Okay, like we have to get rid of the sidekick character, and of course we're working on it. Like it's gonna be like a long process though, because you know this is a character with like you know quite a bit of history with the Miles brand. You know, but it's it will be dealt with in my series of books.